Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wild Wild Podcast. My name is Adrian Smith, and I am joined by the illustrious Rod Barnett. Hello, Rod. Ciao.
Illustrious. Yes, of course. I thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, lots of exciting things to talk about, but I have to bring this up because this was just announced yesterday. Arrow have just announced this box set called Gothic Fantastico, and I was looking in the small print, and I spotted your name in there. So, first of all, congratulations on keeping this a secret for however long. But could you tell us a little bit about this box set and how you are involved?
Well, I know very little about I know what has been made public in general about the set. I only have one small piece of information, which is, one small non-public piece of information, which I don't think anybody would be upset about me releasing, which is what my participation involved. Basically, it is an amazing looking set, and to be honest, they kept a lot of the details from me as well. Simply because there was no reason for me to know it, but I was not aware that the film that I worked on was going to actually be part of an entire box set. That is very exciting. That's wonderful. Yeah. I wrote an essay on one of the 4 films included in that set.
So should we just say what these films are?
Yeah.
So this is the box set is called Gothic Fantastico 4 Italian Tales of Terror. Lovely bit of alliteration there. And we've got, sadly, no Antonio Margheriti, but once again,
not yet.
Once again, another Italian box set from Arrow with no Margheriti. But anyway, that's just my own personal hang-up. So we've got a film. None of these films I've ever seen, I have to first of all say. We've got Lady Morgan's Vengeance. Then we've got The Blancheville Monster. We've got one called The Third Eye. And then The Witch. There are loads of films called The Witch, so I'm not sure which is which. But anyway, so which of these films did you write about?
I wrote about The Third Eye, which is a wonderful. Okay. All these movies are absolutely beautiful films, and The Third Eye is it's underknown and underseen, especially here in the States, which is a real shame. It's an early role for both Erica Blank and for Franco Nero, and it's an exceptional film.
So how did you what are you bringing to this? How did you get involved?
I was asked by the curator of the set, Kat Ellinger, and I was more than happy to jump in. I had not watched or rewatched The Third Eye in years and years and years. I just remember being kind of fascinated by it, and then getting to go back through it again, and it's like, believe me, I've got plenty to say about this movie. And as far as the other films in the set, I'm very excited. We did an episode on the Nashi Cast about the Blancheville Monster just a couple of years ago, and so I've recently revisited that film. And The Witch.
Is that a Spanish-Italian co-production then?
To the best of my knowledge, I'd have to look it back up, but I think so, yeah. Okay. And mainly because, if memory serves, a number of the actors involved in the Blancheville Monster also have some Nashi connections,
right?
Including, of course, the mighty Helga Lemay.
Yeah. The one and only.
The one and only. So that if that's going to draw you in, trust me, that's a good thing to be drawn into. But I have to admit, the Witch is a phenomenal movie. I haven't rewatched it. I think it's from 1966 as well. The Third Eye is from 66 as well. But I haven't rewatched The Witch in a blue billion years. And I know that when I last saw it, was on it was on a doopy looking VHS tape at the very best. So the fact that all 4 of these movies are coming out, this is very exciting. I'm just my participation was very, very small. Like I said, one essay out of probably several. From what I'm reading, the essay will be included in the 80-page book that comes with the set that comes out, and which is very exciting. It means I'm next to my name pales in comparison to the people that I'm in this booklet with. I mean, Roberto Curti, Rob Talbot, Jerome Reuter, and Kimberly Lindberghs. I mean, to be honest, the phrase "I'm not worthy" springs to mind immediately.
I'm sure they think the same about you, Rod.
I've given them no good reason to feel that way about me.
Hey, none of those guys have had 2 podcasts running for more than 10 years.
Well, there is that, but at the same time, that does not necessarily make me a good choice to be a writer for something of this stature. But anyway,
in that case, we'll just skip over your essay and move straight on to the next one.
Probably the best way to go. Yeah.
No, I think it's really exciting. And one thing I love about the Arrow sets is that they do include a book, and they still include booklets. One of my sort of ongoing disappointments with a lot of other box sets, particularly like Severin or Vinegar Syndrome, is they don't tend to do booklets or books. They did do books with the Christopher Lee boxes. I've just been reading, I've just been watching actually one of those this morning. But by and large, they don't tend to do written essays. They don't have booklets. And the essay booklet is always my favourite extra in a Blu-ray. So it's great that they're including a whole sort of book full of essays for this one. So yeah, it's very exciting. Comes out in October, and I'm sure everybody listening to this will have already added it to their long wish lists.
Yes.
I know I'll be. But yeah, I haven't seen any of these films, but they all sound great. And like you mentioned, yours has got Franco Nero in, and there's another film's got Richard Johnson, who I'm a big fan of. So yes, I will be checking these out.
And for fans of Erica Blank, she's in she's in 2 of the films. So
Oh right, there you go. Yeah, good stuff. Congratulations. Also, just telling everybody what you've been up to on the Bloody Pit. You just did a great episode with Nicholas Schlegel on Krimi films, because of course he just wrote that really excellent book on the Rialto Krimis, which I see you've reviewed the book on your blog. I also did a review of that book a couple of months ago for Cinema Retro.
I tried not to read your review when I realized I was going to have to write one. I was like, oh God, I really don't want to copy anything he says, or I'll feel like a jerk.
It's fine. Would have been fine. But yeah, again, Krimi, like most of this kind of European genre stuff, I'm coming to a lot of this stuff new. So my experience of Krimis is fairly limited. So reading that book, I really encouraged me to watch more. So I was very pleased to get the Christopher Lee Volume 2 set. So I've already watched is it the Yellow Daffodils?
No. It's The Secret of the Red Orchid is in that.
Red Orchid. The Yellow Daffodils is a different one.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get these titles confused. Yeah, the Red Orchid. Yeah, that one was fun. And I have bought myself one of the German Blu-ray box sets that has got English subtitles, so I'm catching up on those. But I really enjoyed your interview with him anyway. It was really interesting to hear what he had to say about it.
Oh, it's a great book, and of course those films they're kind of an untapped space for at least for British and American audiences. I think they've kind of fallen to the wayside. I don't think that they're not really been much in the way of decent releases over here. I mean, excellent releases there in Germany, obviously, but at the same time, the space that they filled in genre cinema is very important, and I think that the more attention that we can bring to the Krimi genre, the better, because it's fascinating. You're not going to be displeased watching those movies. They are crowd pleasers, to say the least. I mean, they were huge box office hits, every single one of them when they were released back in the 60s and 50s and 60s and all the way up to the 70s, depending on how you want to count them. And there's so many of them. They're so entertaining, and they're just great films. And like I say, I've always kind of peppered those movies one way or another throughout my viewing for more than 20 some odd years now, and it becomes more and more evident there are these little niches like that are not they're not as well known as I think they should be. And anything that brings attention to that genre, the better. Of course, you probably heard in my in my podcast me putting the bug in Mr. Schlegel's ear about what Untapped the next book that he needs to write. Which he's under no obligation, but hey,
it made me think, because obviously this is the first book, the first English language book really on the Krimi films, which seems extraordinary given how important they are, like you say. But it made me think there's another gap in the market there, which is somebody should do a book on the Brian Edgar Wallace Krimi films.
Oh yeah,
that's completely untapped, and I thought briefly, I should add that to my list of books I might write one day. But
well, I mean, it's a great thing. Remember, he shrunk down just to keep the book under control. He shrunk it down to just the stuff put out by Rialto, and there is that competing series of films from CCC, which is also well worthy of attention. So yeah.
And I am on a bit of a Edgar Wallace kick at the moment. So yeah, maybe. But anyway. I mean, obviously there are also interesting connections between Edgar Wallace and the Krimis and then Italian films and all of these things. So there's a lot of blurred lines. But let's get to our movie for this episode, which has a couple of different names, and we could call it Tough Cop, or we could call it, well, the Italian title, Il trucido e il sbirro, which I'm sure I pronounced wrong. Il trucido, I don't know. Anyway, which translates as The Murderer and the Cop. It's just been released in the UK under its longer title, Freehand for a Tough Cop. Which is really great. I was just listening to it again before we started recording. Such a cool opening theme. So here we are again. Now, this last episode talked a lot about Tomas Milian and how it took me half an hour into the film to realise that it was him. Now this, in my head, is what Tomas Milian looks like.
Full head of super curly hair that looks like it hasn't been washed in about 2 months. And eyeliner, yeah.
Eyeliner, beard, big curly wig. This is the Tomas Milian that I always have in my head. So, absolutely no mistaking him in this movie. So we've got all the big hitters here, really. Tomas Milian, Claudio Casinelli. We've got Henry Silva, and of course Umberto Lenzi. I mean, we could spend hours talking about just one of those people.
Oh well, I mean, don't forget Dardendo Sarcetti too.
Yes.
Sacchetti. Dardendo Sarcetti. What a screenwriter!
Screenwriter, yeah. Well, okay. As you've brought him up, tell us about him.
Oh well, he's a name who, if you start watching not just this particular type of film, but a lot of different types of Italian films from the 60s, 70s, all the way up through the 80s, you're going to run across Dardendo Sacchetti's name repeatedly because he was involved in, well, let's just say his name shows up on almost 100 different screenplays. So
yeah,
it's kind of hard to avoid him. And he even has uncredited rewrite information.
Yeah, I was going to say, he seems to have just as many uncredited credits.
Exactly.
But yeah, some amazing, for all the big heavy hitting Italian genre films, his name's attached to them, which is,
I mean, just in this genre alone, we're talking about Emergency Squad, The Tough Ones, The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist, Stunt Squad, A Man Called Magnum. I mean, that's just some of the the stuff he did for the cop genre in the 70s. He was credited with the story on Bava's Bay of Blood. He was credited with the story on Cat o' Nine Tails.
Hang on. There was a story in Bay of Blood.
Oh, really?
That's the first I've heard.
Of course, there's a story in Bay of Blood. You got to string those murders all together.
Wow.
It's about the whole movie's theme is about greed and the horrors thereof. Man, that's the beauty of Bay of Blood, is that if you don't pick up on that theme, you're not watching the movie properly. Come on.
Okay. I'll try again. But yeah, I mean, he did another Bava. He did Shock. Bava's Shock. He's got a uncredited contribution to Zombie Flesh Eaters. He wrote Cannibal Apocalypse. Just a whole bunch, and let's not read them all out. But even Amityville 2, his name is attached to that, which is one of the greatest sequels.
Yeah. He's one of the many writers credited for one of my favorite non-gore fests from Lucio Fulci, The Psychic, or Murder to the Tune of Seven Black Notes.
Yeah, that is good. Again, as I keep saying, I'm watching all this stuff generally for the first time. So yeah, I just saw that recently. It just came out on Blu-ray over here a couple of months ago, and I reviewed it for Cinema Retro, and I'd never seen that before. What a great film that was!
Yeah, it's a hell of a film, and like I say, it if you just know his name because he pops up with credits on the screenplays of City of the Living Dead for Fulci and The Beyond, and House by the Cemetery for Fulci, as well as The New York Ripper, Manhattan Baby, that's all well and good, but I mean he did a lot of work. He did the screenplay for The Last Hunter for Margheriti, and he worked with Margheriti more than once or twice, but also he moved smoothly into the 80s very very well with screenplays for 1990 The Bronx Warrior, and Iron Master, one of my favorite underappreciated barbarian films. I think that I absolutely love that. And then for Bava's Baby Boy, that'd be Lamberto. He wrote Blast Fighter, Devilfish, Blade in the Dark. It's kind of hard to not be really impressed when you realize just how extensive his credits were. Come on, this is the man who wrote Demons and Demons 2. If you can't spin total madness out of a nonsensical plot line like this man can, then you just don't need to be writing a screenplay. I'm sorry.
No. And so he did work. But coming back to Margheriti, he wrote a few things for Margheriti, and he's actually he's in that great documentary, The Outsider, Il Cinema di Antonio Margheriti. That his son was the Margheriti's son was sort of behind. He was interviewed in that, but it's an amazing career. Still working up until fairly recently. Lots of TV, which is where everybody seemed to end up by the mid-90s. It was just pretty much all production in Italy is just on television. But what I also like, just the last mention here, is that he wrote Killer Crocodile and Killer Crocodile 2.
Well, you got to know those are scripts that you just write immediately back to back. I mean, that's the way you do.
And he's actually, I think he has a cameo in Killer Crocodile 2. I did, in case anyone's interested, I did actually do an episode of the B-movie cast on Killer Crocodile earlier this year, maybe. That's a fun movie. But so we owe this guy a great debt of we owe him a lot of gratitude for his contribution to the films that we love and continue to discover.
That's right, people. Dardando Sacchetti. Watch out for Dardando Sacchetti's name in the screenplay credits, because you're in for something interesting.
Yeah, also known as David Parker Jr.
I know. I love the old pseudonyms for American consumption.
I don't know how he fitted all this in and the theme to Ghostbusters, but
I think you've mixed two people up there. I'm going to go out on a limb and think and claim that you mixed two people up there. Pretty amazing contribution. He wrote this with Umberto Lenzi, and I'm trying to think, have we done Umberto Lenzi? I'm getting all of these things mixed up now.
Have we done Umberto Lenzi before? Or is this our
know.
first Lenzi?
It
seems extraordinary.
I mean,
haven't.
I don't think that we actually have. I think that we've covered a couple of films that Mr. Lenzi had it was like a second unit director and things like that on, but I don't think that we've ever dived headlong into his work. No,
we don't want to spend ages on it, but should we just briefly share our enthusiasm for Umberto Lenzi? Do you have a favourite Lenzi movie?
Oh my goodness, I have probably 5 different favorite movies. Once again, I'm just going to tout the joys of the underappreciated Iron Master from 1983, simply because I'm insane. But of course, if you've seen much in the way of Umberto Lenzi, if you want to know what his name should attach to in your head, it's probably something along the lines of Nightmare City from 1980. Which is
so good.
Yeah, if you want to talk about a film that has dream logic / no logic, Nightmare City is your zombie boat.
It's fabulous. It's really good.
It's astonishing.
And I recently, or I say recently, maybe a year or so ago, I wrote an article for Screen Magazine on Italian cannibal films, and so I talked at length about Eaten Alive and Cannibal Ferox, and I know I may be in the minority here, but and Man from Deep River. I really enjoy the Italian cannibal films, which I know sounds wrong. And Umberto Lenzi effectively kind of started that off with Man from Deep River.
Yeah.
And then kind of took it to delirious heights with Cannibal Ferox. And Eaten Alive is amazing. I really love that film. He's just done so many interesting things, and obviously loads of Gialli. As well as Polizioteschi. One that I really like, obviously he did all of those, what are they called? He did all those films with
Carol Baker. Yeah, those wonderful thrillers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like the what's it called, Oasis of Fear, or also known as A Nice Place to Kill. A Quiet Place to Kill. There's a couple of his films that both...
Quiet Place to Kill is a different film, yeah.
Yeah, is it called A Nice Place? I don't know. There's a couple of different titles. But anyway, yeah, an extraordinary career. And I'm sure... And
also, now that we've mentioned the Krimis, of course, depending on how they credit them, he directed what is either a Giallo or a Krimi, the very last of that cycle, 7 Bloodstained Orchids in 1972. So,
yeah.
But then again, I mean, you look at the stuff. I mean, yes, the Carol Baker thrillers. Now there's a wonderful box set that's come out in the past couple of years that will show you just how talented a man he was. And of course, most people, I fell into the trap that a lot of people do with Umberto Lenzi, which is that the first things I saw from him were things like Nightmare City and Cannibal Ferox and Eaten Alive, and I thought, okay, well, this guy's a bit of a gore hack and whatever. And it wasn't until after I'd seen those movies that I backed up and started seeing the incredible crime films that he made in the 70s, and then realized, and he also made some very interesting giallos, things like Knife of Ice and 7 Bloodstained Orchids. And I have to admit, I'm still continuing to be impressed by the further back I go into Umberto Lenzi's list of credits. I guarantee you, I continue to be impressed, because only in the past few years have I discovered just how much I enjoy some of the movies he made in the early and mid 60s that were kind of adventure films.
Peplum films and stuff.
Well,
pirate
or
films.
Peplum connected, of things like the Triumph of Robin Hood and the.
I was going to say, you love Robin Hood movies, so you must have seen
I do, and so there is that weakness there, but also things like the Invincible Masked Rider, basically these period adventure films, where it's swordplay rather than gunplay for the most part. They're an absolute joy. I just get so much of a kick out of them, and he really made some great ones. And I still haven't gone a whole hog into his Sandokan stuff that he made in the 60s and then returned to in the 90s for Italian television. I'm wanting to dive into those as well, but it's like, you couple that with the rest of his stuff in the 60s, all the Eurospy stuff and things like that, and it's just like, he's someone who I I maligned, at least to myself, for a number of years before discovering just how impressive his abilities were. He's an amazing director. Umberto Lenzi.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on this guy.
And it is a very similar career to somebody like Margheriti, where you can look at the list of films and you can overlay a map of what was going on in Italian genre cinema.
Oh yeah.
And like what the which were the commercial drivers behind each of these genres, and you can just see that he's right there doing basically whatever was making money. So he goes through peplums and adventure films into Euro spy, westerns and gialli, and just all the way through.
And in each one of the genres that he touches on, he ends up directing at least one incredibly standout element, a standout example of each of those genres. And it's like, I mean, you look at things like Gang War in Milan, and then
that's a great one.
Yeah, and then after that he directs Spasmo, which is this incredible, or Knife of Ice, before it, where you're looking at these giallos that are astonishing, and then Almost Human, which is one of the most incredible of the crime films that he made. And then back to back with Eyeball, which is one of the most insane giallos you're ever going to see in your life. And then he segues into making a lot of these cop films like we're discussing today, and
he made loads of them.
He made at least 5 of them that I would point to and say those are really good starting points for this entire genre.
Yeah, there's a good interview with him on the disc for, I think it's The Cynic, the Rat and the Fist, with Maurizio Merli, and he talks about how he always thought Maurizio Merli would end up dying on one of his films because the stuff that he had to do was so dangerous. And then actually Maurizio Merli, I think he died quite young, but he had a heart attack playing tennis, rather than actually doing a stunt for Umberto Lenzi. But
oh my goodness.
His films are pretty full on. And Tough Cop is a good example of one of those, sort of right in the middle there of what he was doing. Yeah. And it's an interesting one. So in Roberto Curti's book, he talks about how this film is kind of the beginning of he calls it the beginning of a new wave, because up until this point the films are starting to become quite repetitive, and they're just sort of getting a bit stagnant. And then he points this film out as kind of renewing the polizieschi, mostly through the Manezza character played by Tomas Milian, and Manezza translates as trash, apparently. So bringing that character in, and who's basically very similar to the character that he plays in The Big Gun Down, and also he plays another character a bit like it in The Cop in Blue Jeans. So bringing this character in, and there's a kind of element of the buddy comedy in this movie, as well as all the kind of harsh stuff as well, and he really helped to sort of refresh the cop genre with this movie. I think that's something I would agree with that. I haven't seen as many as Roberto Curti, but I'd certainly agree that this film does seem to be bringing something new.
Well, if you came to these films the way that most people came to these films, which is kind of in a jumble, you're not watching them the way they came out. Most of us weren't around in the 70s to be experiencing these movies as they came out in the theaters. So the fact that this signals a change in tone, if not it really kind of signals a bit of a change in approach as well. The whole buddy cop genre starts to become something that is creeping into kind of the standard format here. And it's hard to not look at Freehand for a Tough Cop and not see 48 Hours. From the early 80s. We're talking about the same kind of setup with just some variations. A cop needs the help of a convict who's in prison, gets him out of prison so that he can use him for his own ends, and of course complications ensue. And so same basic plot. Before we go on, I want to ask a simple question. I was trying for the life of me to figure out why in the English dub they refer to Tomas Milian's character as Garbage Can. And of course, it's not hard to figure out when you know what they're calling him in Italian.
Yeah.
It's like, it's got too many symbols. You just can't call him trash in English because it's too few
'Cause
syllables
it's
to
gotta
make
be
it work.
manezza. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to stretch it out. So garbage can. But to be honest, the beauty of that is that every time they call him garbage can, I'm just grinning from ear to ear and thinking, yeah. It's exactly what I would call this character.
Now, of course, Umberto Lenzi, just a couple of years later, would have another hero called Trash in Bronx Warriors. So
it does seem to be a name that he returned to for some reason.
It's a name that he came back to. Yeah, and we've also got I think we've talked about Claudio Casinelli before. We've done films that he's been in before, haven't we? I think. Which film did we do with Casinelli?
I'm trying to remember.
Man. I'm sure it was one of them. So many.
Well, I mean, he does play Zeus in Hercules, so that will always ring a bell for me. But
it's true. I'm pretty sure Casinelli has come into this before. But anyway, I really like him, and he's done loads of these films as well. But should we, as we're half an hour in, shall we have a quick go at the plot?
Oh, well, he was in What Have They Done to Your Daughters?
Oh yeah, of course. There you go.
He was the inspector.
No, he's great. He's really good. So we'll do some of the plot, but again, because this is perhaps a film that's not quite as famous as some of the others, and I don't want to give it all away, but there's a lot of so there's good twists and turns.
Yeah, this is true.
This one I don't want to give away.
By the way, one last weird quirk. Do you think it was in the screenplay or just a quirk of what Tomas Milian wanted to do, that his character wears nothing but flip-flops throughout the entire film? To me, that seems to be... I bet you money that was an actor's choice.
Yeah, I get the feeling he brought his own costume to the set.
He probably slept in that costume for weeks while they were making this movie.
Yeah. He's great. So now I watched this film on the new Blu-ray from there's a new company in the UK called Fractured Visions, and this was one of their first releases. And it's great. It's got loads of good extras on it and stuff. But there's a bit of a glitch on the menu. And so the menu, like background film, runs for a full minute before any of the options come up. And I'm thinking, this is a bit weird. So weird. I was already thinking, is there something wrong with this disc? So then the film starts, and we're in the middle of a Western. And I thought, there's something wrong with this. They've sent the wrong, they've really screwed up something here. So the film, deliberately plays a trick on the audience by starting the opening credits are over scenes from a Western. Now, I don't know whether I should have recognized what Western that was from, or whether they were scenes specifically shot for this movie. I don't know, but yeah, it starts off and we're in. Yeah, I don't know, but it's really confusing.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like sitting down to watch what you know is going to be a cop thriller, and going, crap, did I push the wrong button? What the hell?
What's this? So we get the opening credits playing over a Western, and obviously Umberto Lenzi had made Westerns before, and Tomas Milian has been in Westerns. And again, I don't want to claim this as my own point. Roberto Curti says that there's a good that this film makes that connection that these films have with the Western quite explicit, that several of the Poliziotteschi films are leaning quite heavily into, they could be Westerns if you just gave everybody cowboy hats. Like the stories fit quite well with and the characters are quite similar to people you would find in Westerns. So I thought it was interesting that we start off in a Western.
Yeah, it's very easy to imagine this exact same scenario and story being transplanted to the Old West.
Yeah, I mean, the camera kind of pulls back, and we're actually in a prison watching a Western. And Tomas Milian's character Manezza, he's a prisoner. That's where he's in prison. And they're all like taking the mickey out of this film, and they're shouting at it and calling the sheriff names, and it's like Umberto Lenzi is putting the final nail in the Western coffin here by having his characters complain about Westerns.
Well, in '76, I mean, that's when this film came out. That would not that the spaghetti western cycle had run its course. I mean, there were still a couple of spaghetti westerns that were going to come out over the course of the next couple of years, but that genre had died by then.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we have a police commissioner, Antonio Sarti, played by Claudio Casinelli, and there is a gangster called Brescianelli who has kidnapped a 12-year-old girl and is demanding a ransom. Now, this girl needs regular visits to hospital or she will die because she's got kidney failure. So Sarti wants to find her as quickly as he can, and he, for reasons that I can't quite remember, he thinks that the only way he's going to find her is by breaking Manezza out of prison to help him find Brescianelli. I think he knows that Manezza has worked for Brescianelli in the past. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, also he's just got our buddy Garbage Can here, Thomas Milian's character, has got so many underworld connections and is so well known in the underworld that he'll be able to facilitate finding where in the hell they've got this little girl stashed, because they're on a timeline. They really know that they've only got a certain number of days, less than a week, or this girl's going to die.
And so there's a great sequence where he breaks him out of prison, which reminds me, didn't we just watch another film where somebody got broke out of prison? Was that Revolver?
Yes, exactly. Where that in Revolver, it's arranged. They put pressure on the warden, and he facilitates this.
Yeah.
And in this, I don't know if this was a good idea for a police officer to do this, but he just breaks this guy out of prison. I mean, this is no matter what happens after the fact, doesn't he have to answer for this? I mean, this is a criminal act. He doesn't take the time to go through there's
no due process, is there?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is I understand he's under pressure and he's only got a certain amount of time, or this little girl's going to die, and so it's free hand for a tough cop. I get it, but at the same time, boy, he's going to have to answer for that later on, isn't he? I mean,
yep. And so Manezza eventually agrees to go along with this, and brings in 3 of his friends to help them.
Initially lying to them about the fact that this guy, they hide the fact that his partner is a cop until that's no longer possible, and then let's just say a certain amount of persuasion is involved in keeping the criminals along for the ride.
Yeah, he persuades, doesn't he? Oh, now all these films are starting to get mixed up in my head because we've watched so many. He helps them to rob a train to prove that he's
on board.
Yeah, is that right? There's a really funny scene where one of the guys is there when they're sitting on the train before the robbery, and he's just openly reading a porn mag sitting next to a priest, which is pretty funny.
I know. Well, that and the looks that he's getting from some of the other passengers is pretty amusing.
Yeah. And again, there's a lot about this film. There's a lot of. It's not quite like it's not winking at you. I mean, it's still taking itself seriously, but there's plenty to kind of make you smile at the same time, and that's definitely one of those.
Well, I mean, anyway, maybe this is the time to bring this up, because this is something that we should introduce this, especially for people who are unaware of the Umberto Lenzi crime movies. In general, there's a certain. I'm going to be generous in some of my terminology, but then I might not be as I move along through this discussion. There's a certain looseness to the way in which Umberto Lenzi's films during this period were constructed. For instance, it would be very easy to point out that, hey, maybe, there's no reason to go out of your way to have this breaking out of prison segment at the beginning of the movie just to kick the movie into gear, when, logically, I'm sure that the cops could have found a way to get him out of prison, within a couple of hours without too much trouble, because of the circumstances in which they find themselves trying to, save this girl's life. But okay, well, that whatever. But the looseness that I am talking about is sometimes, sometimes it rears its head, and sometimes the movie kind of tweaks your nose for thinking that the movie's being sloppy in a way, by pulling that wonderful thing that a lot of thrillers can. And I'm not going to reveal things about this movie, because I do think that this is This is a really impressive example of the genre, and I think people need to seek it out if they're curious. But essentially, by kind of pushing the story along and in a way that immediately makes any savvy viewer go, "Hey, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Why are we at this point? Why are we doing this?" And then in just a few minutes, as the sequence plays out, making you realize, "Oh, okay, either there was no point in showing the setup for this, or by not showing you the setup, we not only moved the film along a little quicker and got the plot into motion a little faster, but it's also another way to kind of keep you engaged, because that questioning that a viewer will have immediately makes you kind of lean into what you're doing and paying attention." Mm-hmm. But at times, the kind of looseness or sloppiness, like I say, I'm trying to be careful with my terminology here, does feel as if there is a kind of sloppiness in the construction that is sometimes just being papered over by other elements of the film. And in some cases, it's being papered over by the skill of the director. Sometimes it's being papered over by the fact that the movie is just throwing some really interesting stunts or some really interesting action set pieces at you. But there is a certain amount of, let's call it WTFing, that will happen while you're watching some of these Umberto Lenzi films like this. Sometimes those moments have a payoff that allow you to reconcile that in your thoughts on the logic of what you're being shown. And sometimes it's not necessarily true. And so it becomes more difficult to ascertain whether or not they're rushing through some things in the construction of these movies or not. In other words, are they playing with you intentionally, or are they playing with you because they kind of need to get the film in the can? And I would say this never ends up harming my love of these movies or my enjoyment of them at all. But I'll give an interesting example of this from another Umberto Lenzi crime film, so that I'm not ruining this one at all. And of course, this wouldn't ruin the other film either. This is another Tomas Milian film, directed by Lenzi, called Syndicate Sadists.
Oh yeah,
and it's one of the first of the Umberto Lenzi crime films that I ever saw, because it got released on DVD very early in the 2000s over here, and so it's one you can get a really good look at, and I still have the DVD, and I think it's a great little film. But there comes a point in the movie where we're introduced to Tomas Milian, who's playing a cop in that movie, sitting in a large truck talking, with a couple of other guys, and they're watching something go down, and then all of a sudden we cut to Tomas Milian on a motorcycle rocketing out the back of this truck to take off after some people. And of course, we've been given no information about there being a motorcycle in the back of the truck. We've been given no indication that that's exactly the plan. We've been given no indication that anything like this is going to occur in the movie. It's a smash cut into him rocketing out of the back of the truck. And of course, it's one of those things where it's smart filmmaking from a number of perspectives, but at the same time, it jolts you in a way that kind of makes you, as a viewer, go, well, what the hell? Why are we suddenly here? Why are we doing this now? We just cut from them speaking about what they're doing to this now. And like I say, it's either you can look at it as intentional or non-intentional, or kind of a cut to the chase mentality with these movies. But regardless, whatever that looseness or sloppiness, whatever it may be, it's another element of these Umberto Lenzi crime movies that keeps you as a viewer engaged in a way that some others don't necessarily, because some of these directors can follow a template or follow a script to a meticulous degree, to the point where it becomes a kind of by rote thing. And I do wonder if at a certain point, like you were talking about earlier, that this cycle was starting to kind of feel a little stale. And maybe some of these elements, and there are a number of them here in Freehand for a Tough Cop, where you're looking at this scenario and going, what can we do to enliven this? We're telling a similar story to other films, but how can we present this in a way that perks it up and makes the people who have seen a few of these kind of sit back in their chair with a bit of a surprise? And so Lenzi I think continues to be underestimated, and that that feeling of unease about whether or not the movie is being handled with a firm hand
Yeah.
kind of contributes to my feeling of being impressed by him as a filmmaker.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, I know I just rambled on for about 25
No,
minutes
no,
there.
that's
Sorry.
really good. No, I think you're absolutely right. No, it is really interesting. Um, I mean, I don't know how much more we want to say about this movie other than everyone should watch it, which is perhaps a bit predictable.
Well,
Um,
I've got a couple of. Well, let's talk for a moment
yeah.
about Henry Silva.
Okay. Yes. Go on. I don't know if we've seen him yet in any of these other films,
No,
but
we have not, and I'll be
he's
shocked.
another familiar face in these kinds of movies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Henry Silva was as soon as you see his face, first of all, if you've watched 150 movies in your life, he's been in 40 of them. It's
Yeah.
kind of astonishing. I mean,
And he's still alive, isn't he? He's still around, I believe.
I do believe
He's
that
like
Mr. Silva is still kicking, which is a bit
in
of a
his
shock.
90s. Yeah.
He's in his 90s. He was born in 1928. So he is really getting up there, which means that he may actually be evil because he's living this long. I'm not sure. But this is a man whose career, my God, how many movies was he in? 3,000? No, only about 150. But the joys of watching for Henry Silva, my goodness, his career. Remember, he's an American actor. He started out as making films in the late 50s, early 60s, television and films. Realized that his career was not really going to go where he wanted it to go, and so in the mid 60s
Went to Europe.
baby.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like,
what we do.
I mean,
Makes sense.
you go from The Outer Limits and Voice to the Bottom of the Sea to I'm going to start starring in films in Europe. And man, did his career go berserk, because
And I think because he has that kind of Italian look,
yeah,
which I'm sure helped.
he's got the natural look of a hard man. I mean, this is a guy who can, with just a glance, convince you that he's murdered many people and you just might be next.
Yeah.
So the number of crime films that he was in the 70s is astonishing. He was in The Boss and The Italian Connection and all these different movies,
Cry of a Prostitute.
which
another
is
one.
a harsh
Yeah.
movie. There, oh my God.
Almost Human, which
yeah.
I mentioned before, where he plays basically Dirty Harry,
Yeah, exactly.
pretty
I
much.
mean, yeah, he worked with Thomas Milian several times.
Yeah,
But
no, he's great.
he's amazing. I mean, but at the same time, he was also popping up in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century back in the States too.
Wow.
Playing a major villain in that, and then
Yeah.
he segued into going back to America and being in films there. So he kept popping back and forth across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the bad guy. Well, the bad guy, quote unquote. There's almost nothing of. He's in Megaforce. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, given the opportunity, we would all be in Megaforce, wouldn't we? And I know
No,
I'd be in
no, I
line.
wouldn't,
I'd be first. I would be first in line to be in Buck Rogers.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, he's in Buck Rogers. He's an alligator. He's in Sharky's He's in Sharky's Machine. He's in Chained Heat.
Just
And then, of
fantastic.
course, back in Italy, he's in Escape from the Bronx.
Yeah.
He's in Cannonball Run 2, for God's sake.
Which
Then
is-
he's
yeah,
in one of the
every
best of the he's in one of the best of the Chuck Norris films, Code of Silence. I mean, you're back and forth, and then God Save Us
Quite a
All. He's also in he's also in the best of the Steven Seagal films, Above the Law. So what do you say other than give this man his Oscar already?
Yeah, and
It's long
special
overdue.
award, and some kind of special award for his agent.
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: he was in Dick Tracy, and in a film called Silence of the Hams. Come on.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he's great in this. He plays Brescinelli, which was apparently based on a real kind of mafioso gangster in Italy, according to the book. And he's kidnapped this kid, but yeah, like you said, he's basically just going to let the child die. The film becomes this kind of urgent chase with also, as well as trying to find the girl,
Mm-hmm.
Sati, Claudio Casinelli, he's got to keep he's got to keep a lot of plates spinning, because if his cover gets blown, or if anything goes wrong with this madcap scheme, then it's all over. There's one point where, isn't there a point where him and Manetza pretend to be painters and decorators in a police station?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember what information he's trying to get from the police station, but he has to.
They're trying to they're trying to question somebody who's locked up there.
Oh, yes, that was it.
But yeah, the movie, and this is the joy of a movie like this. It provides a lot of different scenarios built within its story to keep you entertained, because of all the hoops that the characters who are trying to do what they're doing have to jump through. All of these different hoops, and you're right about keeping all the plates spinning, because periodically this freaking tough cop has got to make his case to his boss to keep the higher ups from screwing with him, because they don't see, they keep screwing up and they keep failing, and not they haven't found the kid yet, and so he's got to keep convincing his superiors to let him continue on his path. And so he's got that. He's got to keep the criminals he's working with from finding out that he's a cop. And then once they find out that he's a cop, they've got to they've got to find a way to keep the criminals on board with what they're doing, because
without being stabbed in the back.
Right. Because while Garbage Can's pretty straightforward after a certain point early on, that as far as he's concerned, we're going to save this kid. The other criminals, may or may not give a damn about this little girl, and are much more interested in what money they can wring, or money or jewels or whatever they can wring out of the attempt along the way.
There's a great sequence towards the end where they have to kind of raid. I think it's Brescianelli's hideout, and there's a really great shootout in this building. There's a lot of good action.
There is,
which I don't want to spoil too much. So this is definitely a film. I think we just say this now in every episode. Definitely a film to seek out. And if you enjoy Tomas Milian's character, Garbage Can or Manetza, then you can catch him playing the same character in
Destruction Force.
Yeah, there's Destruction Force, which came immediately after this. Then there's Brothers Till We Die, where he plays the same character again. That's an Umberto Lenzi one as well.
Have you seen either of those movies?
I think I've seen Brothers Till We Die.
I don't know that I've seen either one of them, which makes me feel kind of ashamed.
He then came back to Manetza a couple of years later for a Bruno Corbucci film called Un contro l'altro praticamente amici, which, don't ask me to do a live translation, but it's based something against, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not gonna. There's no English translation on the IMDb, so
and I've not seen that one either.
No, me neither. So that one came later, but that's so that's like four different films where he plays this character. So clearly, I think he had a lot to do with creating that character in the first place.
Well, I think that obviously Milian enjoyed the character, and I think one of the reasons why he may have enjoyed the character is the fact that, let's be clear, we haven't talked about this element at all, and it won't ruin the film at all, but the character he's playing is essentially kind of a jester, a trickster character. And if you have any doubts about that, the fact that he goes out of his way to dress up in different costumes and outfits to fool people throughout this story.
There's that great bit where he's a shepherd.
Yeah. Well, not only that, one of the first things they have to do, they grab the outfit off of a courier, a messenger boy, and he pretends to be the messenger boy so that they can get into this house to find out something else. And it's just by the second or third costume change, it's like ding ding ding. Okay, wait a minute. Very clearly, this character is being played in a certain way. This is the court jester guy. This is the trickster character, and it's kind of amazing, and it makes me wonder if that's something that's continued through the other appearances of this character in those other movies.
Yeah. He I guess he was so loved from this film and he enjoyed playing the character so much that that it just carries on. Even the that second one, Destruction Force, that's not directed by Umberto Lenzi.
No. I mean, and that's one of the interesting
Milian
things.
plays the same character again.
Yeah, it's like how do you carry over? I mean, the third one, Brothers Till We Die, is an Umberto Lenzi film, but it's like, you know, how do you get the gumption to go ahead and just reuse the character for other people? It's kind of wild.
Yeah, well, there was a very loose, copyright was quite loose in those days, I guess.
Well, and I don't know that people really cared that much.
Nobody was too worried about that. But yeah, do seek this one out. It's really, as we keep saying, it's a great one, and it's available on Blu-ray over here. Is it on Blu-ray where you are? How did you see it?
I don't know. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray over here or not. I have to admit, I do know. Was it released on Blu-ray over here as Tough Cop?
Could be Tough Cop. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what it's released on. Released on Blu-ray over here as Okay. But regardless, if you have any interest in this genre at all, this is a good example.
Yeah. No, it's great. Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it there for people to discover what happens. Do they rescue the girl? I mean, it's not guaranteed, because there are other films where children are in peril and it doesn't work out well for them. So, you know, you can't assume anything with this movie.
It'll throw a curve.
Yeah, what was that one I just watched? My Dear Killer. I watched that not that long ago, which has got a kidnapped little girl in a concrete bunker. Man, that's depressing.
I don't mean to be laughing about the depressing aspect of it, but you're right in that the Italian filmmakers were more than willing to throw a hideous thing at you and make you sit back and wonder just what kind of crazy person they were.
Yeah, so you just don't know where it's going to go. So thank you for listening. We'll leave that one there, I think, for now. We've got 2 films left on this run, so do come back for our next episode, where we're going to talk about the Heroin Busters. So that should be interesting. Hopefully that's another good one. They're all good. What can I say? The films. I don't mean the episodes, but the film. Well, maybe.
Hopefully the episodes are good.
Hopefully. Okay, so that's it for now. Thank you, everybody. If you like the podcast, please do leave us a review and a rating. And share it on social media, all that good stuff. I have also set up a coffee link, which is in the notes and also on the website for the podcast. So if you want to buy Rod or I a virtual coffee, but you didn't know how to, now you can. I don't actually drink coffee, so
I don't either. I drink tea.
There we go. Well, you can buy us something. So if you'd like to donate towards the podcast, that's how you can do it. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I thought I did set that one up. But it would be great to be able to grow and have a much better website and maybe buy some better recording equipment and pay a graphic designer. You know, all those things that would help us to get even better at what we're doing. But in the meantime, the fact that you've listened this far to the end of the episode is also great. So
yeah, it's very encouraging to those of us making these shows.
Yes, it is. So thanks everybody for listening. We will be back soon. Bye for now.
Bye everyone.